everyone. Thank you for joining us here today on this very exciting panel. We will be looking at a very interesting topic on untapping the critical sector of health, wellness, and we are joined on stage by these trailblazers, innovators, and entrepreneurs that will tell us about these technologies and how they're navigating the landscape today, from everything from AI innovation to regulation. So before we start, I'd like the panelists to please introduce themselves, and then we can jump right into the topic and panel.
Hey, good morning. Can you guys hear me okay? Perfect. My name is Khadija. I'm the CEO of Biosapien. Essentially a physician by training, but have done several things in the past, including being on the other side as a venture capitalist. I've started about 6 companies in the past. Not as exciting as that sounds. Some wins, some losses. Happy to talk about it another time, and thanks for having me here.
Hello, everyone. My name is LP Noel. I'm a technology entrepreneur. BioTwin is my fourth business, and I founded BioTwin, which is a human virtual company, which helps do precision and personalized medicine. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Hi, I'm Lorena Puica. I'm the founder of Sid.life AI, an investment banker gone save the world, as cheesy as that sounds. I've done about 5 degrees in math and finance, and then due to a personal health challenge, I decided that my skill set is better put to helping people live higher quality lives, and hopefully 1 billion of them. So what we've done is basically taken all the knowledge that exists in preventive health, about 1.2 million research papers. We've built that into one AI engine, and we're making that accessible, affordable, sustainable for millions of people today in 26 countries.
Excellent. Hi, Nina Tandon, CEO and co-founder of EpiBone. EpiBone is a 10-year-old company, so I'm not a serial entrepreneur. At least not yet. However, electrical engineer turned bioengineer by training, later got an MBA after working as a management consultant, where I think like Khadija also saw that other side. And what we do at EpiBone is we combine several deep tech modalities like 3D fabrication, robotics, and stem cell science to do something really natural, which is to make bone and cartilage that's just like the bone and cartilage in our bodies, but grown from cells in a lab. And we do that because, and we can get into it, skeletal diseases are the #1 cause of disability worldwide. Thanks, Zane.
Thank you. So Nia, we'll actually start with you. You work in the biotechnology and extremely innovative in terms of the vision that you have for EpiBone and the problem that you're solving. How do you balance that with the regulatory hurdles and challenges? I'd actually like to ask LP and Khadija after on that as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. So I'm a New Yorker. I'm an American by citizenship, have global parentage. And so I think when, and I mentioned that EpiBone is not new. We're 10 years old, and I've been working on the technology for 10 years prior. So I've been doing this work for 20 years. And I'd promised my sister, and I'd promised my husband, and a whole host of other people that by the time they needed cartilage, we would have it for them. And I knew that I couldn't keep this promise if we stayed in the US alone. So we did, the US, for example, has great things like the FDA, and when you get FDA approval, it's highly exportable. However, we couldn't escape things like the macro conditions of high interest rates and high inflation, and there were companies dropping right and left in what's called the biotech winter, trading below enterprise value, negative enterprise value. So we did a worldwide search to say, is there a place in the world, any place in the world, because I'm an American, but I'm also an earthling, where maybe some of these macro forces are different. And the search brought us to places like, not surprisingly, like Singapore, here, Taipei, and elsewhere. And what makes Abu Dhabi really unique is the exact question. I promise it wasn't a plant. I think that make the ecosystem really unique. The commercial and regulatory opportunity that's available here, and it's just so unique because, and I'll say commercial because it's a growing ecosystem. What we do with skeletal diseases is in the national interest. We can reach 80% of the world's population within an 8-hour flight, which matters if you're making perishable products that are alive. We're making, living joint replacements, for example. So that's really important. So from a commercial perspective, it's really well located, but the regulatory piece can't be understated. There's top-tier medical institutions here, which is, essential for what we do. But the futuristic regulations that are being written for the moment, and in the US, unfortunately, they've been written for really the first wave of therapies, which was about 30 years ago. That mix of the logistical crossroads, the top-tier medical institutions, we can just look right out the window, and the forward-thinking regulatory policies will allow us to achieve a few things we couldn't do in the US. Things like, nerdy things like platform designation, basically just reaching patients 3 to 5 years faster than we could in the US alone, and enlarging our total addressable market more exponentially than we could in the US. So these are things that if the regulations are written thoughtfully and borrowing best practices from, and this is what the UAE does so well, they borrow what's done well elsewhere and then accelerate it and do things here first, fastest, best, by learning those lessons and just executing really well. So we're so excited to be here and be part of this journey of, this new, I think, push around biotechnology here in the region.
Amazing. Khadija, what about, from your perspective at Biosapien, how have you seen the balance with biotechnology innovation and the regulatory framework of where you were before and then moving to Abu Dhabi? Do you share the same experiences or perspective as Nina?
Yeah, definitely. I think I come from a different perspective because we were 2 cohorts prior to where Nina is. So I've been in Abu Dhabi for about 1.5 years, give or take. So I've actually seen the discussions change from, hey, what is biotech, to, oh my God, now we want to invest in biotech and we have the desire to want to grow and et cetera. Kind of voicing what Nina said, I think from a regulatory standpoint, if we can talk about that for a second, in the US, it takes about 9 months to get a regulatory approval to just start a clinical trial. It's 7 business days in the UAE. It's substantially faster. It's stronger. It's more innovative in the sense that there's an entire idea within DOH called sandboxing, which does not exist in the US. I can tell you that for sure. In order for you to actually speak to someone in the regulatory space, whether it's the FDA or the CMA or whoever it is, you basically have to schedule an appointment, set in a request, spend about 1 year getting response back, and then they give you a date for, 2027, Q3, in the middle of June in Washington, D.C., right? Whereas in the UAE, if you would like to speak to DOH, they're on the 15th floor of Al Khatam Tower. You just go knock on their door and they'll happily chat with you. So I think that open door policy and the desire to innovate is something that really differentiates the UAE from other regulatory entities that exist. The EU, I would say, if I can, is like 50 years behind. In that sense, it takes even longer to get an approval, to have feedback, to have that collaborative sort of approach, where I think the UAE is at the forefront in the GCC. Because other countries like Saudi and Qatar and Kuwait and Bahrain, they're all actively moving towards that. But I think the key runner-up is the UAE in that regard.
Before we move to the AI space and remain in the bio space, LP, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Well, my experience is very similar. But coming from Canada, so Canada is a free healthcare system. It's got a lot of pro, but one of the major problems with that, it's the system is really slow to innovate. It's one speed only. When Katia was saying it's 9 months in the US, that's actually, you guys are lucky. It's a minimum of 2 years in Canada, and you should expect 3 before you start a collaborative research project with a hospital. Doing AI, you cannot afford to wait 2 or 3 years on that. And it's the same thing in regulation. BioTwin, we create a virtual replica of you, of your own biology. We have an at-home kit. It's quite novel, and the regulatory institution don't really know how to apply the rules, and so they're basically just waiting, which is totally different here. You can really rapidly launch a project with major institutions like the Cleveland Clinic. They're actually open to that, and they're looking for innovation. And I've got the same feedback with the Department of Health, the reason why we're here today is we got to meet the Department of Health. We told them what we were doing. They were impressed, they loved it, and said, you should come to our country. We love innovation, and that's the feedback we've had with them. The project that we're launching, they're one of the first supporter. And what we also like about the system here is nobody is afraid of failure. We'll be announcing a project with the Cleveland Clinic shortly, and one of the things they told us is this, let's start this, and if it doesn't work at first, let's reiterate and let's make it work. So they really have the right mindset, which in Canada we really do not have. We have to fight the system instead of having this supporting us. We need to fight with them all the time. So it's really great to be here and be surrounded and have everyone working alongside to the benefit of us entrepreneur, but also ultimately the patient will benefit from that.
Thank you, LP. I think we'll pivot to a different angle. Epibone, BioTwin, and BioSapien are all in the hard tech, deep tech space, and obviously require regulation to the innovation. I'll move to Sid, AI, Lorena, and I'd love to hear more about how AI has helped looking at individual and business wellness, which you reiterated as more quality of life, and how these technologies look a bit more macro into a different angle of health and wellness.
Super. And the medical space is a really good background to this. Today in the world, we have 90% of the global healthcare costs that are linked to preventable conditions. So when people talk about wellness or life quality, what we're actually talking about is basically $8 trillion every year that goes down the drain. So the opportunity is really to empower the individual to take charge of their own life quality, aka not only health journey, but also their impact on the environment, their career, their financial health, all of these that we have packed under SID's roof. So the opportunity here is clearly financially very attractive. But if we look specifically here at the UAE, the number one cause of death is cardiovascular disease, and number 3 is diabetes. Now imagine if we empower the population with a simple AI mentor tool that reduces that risk by just 1%. Currently, the UAE is spending 10 billion on that. So reducing that by 1%, you're already saving a few hundred millions from the get-go. So the power of AI in this space of prevention analytics is really to empower the individual to take charge, but also organizations like, for example, the UAE again is cutting edge with organizations like Malafi. It's brilliant. I've traveled around the world. We operate in 26 countries, and I haven't seen a country that has genuinely all of the data for a patient and individual. And working with that, leveraging AI, and we've built a pipeline of over 1 million research papers to make sense of that data. You're basically leveraging technology to do the job of interpreting data and providing advice, guidance, and support to millions of people for cents on the dollar. So I think the real power of AI is for the individual to take charge. I think everyone wants to take charge, but also for organizations, governments, and hospitals to have a much clearer picture of the return on investment for the money that get put in prevention.
I'd like to follow up on that. So can you walk us through the platform and how it works, and maybe just quick kind of user experience for an individual and how that would look like for an organization, and the kind of outputs and outcomes that you would imagine from seeing how AI can be looking at the more like organizational or behavioral change within businesses?
Great, sure. So first, in simple terms, the technology is the world's first large language model in life quality. So we leverage 1.2 million research papers. Imagine that that goes into a big engine. The engine extracts the right knowledge, the right KPIs, and the right connections between what do you do and what is the dollar impact and the outcome. So imagine all of that done by AI. If we needed people to do that, we would need about 60,000 doctors and researchers doing that non-stop for 1 decade. So that's part one. It took us 5 years to build that platform from zero. And then imagine that all of that knowledge is being transferred on a real-time basis to a virtual companion app for individuals, and I'll share a bit about that, and then a population analytics dashboard for the organization. Now, the link between the research and the output is the interesting part, and it's about 9 different AI engines that work there in risk prediction, in recommendation engine, personalization engine, and every single day at 6 a.m. in the morning, all of the research that was published in the last 24 hours is collected and built into the engine. So every day you basically have all of the knowledge that exists today on the planet in life quality. So every person that has access to SID then has in their hands a companion that has all of the knowledge that is able to collect their personal data, their health data, their movement data, location. So basically all of that is building a digital twin of them to figure out what are risk areas, what areas do they want to focus on. Maybe it's physical health, maybe it's financial well-being, maybe it's career, maybe it's environmental impact. And then they are guided to make the smallest changes for the biggest impact. For the governments, organizations that work with us, the biggest challenge is to make sense of data. The last decade, the name of the game was data is the new gold or the new oil. Well, now the problem is we have a ton of data, but what do we do with it? So the engine is basically enabling us to make sense of that data, to provide advice, guidance, insights to the individual and to the organization, to see improvement in productivity, reduction in health costs, improvement in return on investment, return on engagement, as well as overall population life quality. That's a wrap.
Thank you, Lorena. I think AI the emergence of AI has been seen as this new kind of hot topic. I think especially in the past 2 years, everyone's talking about AI, whereas it's not necessarily a vertical of its own, it's a bit more horizontal because it cuts through a lot of sectors and verticals. Nina, can you walk us through with Epibone? You said the company's been around for 10 years, so clearly you've seen a lot of technologies and developments over the years, and piggybacking on this utilization of AI to optimize a lot of your processes. Can you explain to us how AI has helped transform, push the mission of Epibone? And then I'd like to ask the same question for the bio team.
I love this question. You know, my background is electrical engineering and computer science. So I started out doing enterprise communication software in the early .com era. And so one of the first projects that I ever did before even starting my work in tissue engineering was on a non-invasive lung cancer detector project in Italy. It was called the Libra Nose, and it worked by integrating the information from several sensors. You've probably heard that dogs can smell cancer, right? Well, how would we, this was a project meant to kind of copy that. So there was an array of sensors that had different coatings on the sensors, and all of those sensors responded aspecifically to this presence of a scent. And we would use, at that point, 20 years ago, a pretty primitive version of AI called principal component analysis to kind of collapse all of this complicated data and read out a signal that would tell us cancer or no cancer. And in the past, I say that because in the past 20 years, it's been what happened was first, and I love what you said, we had the Human Genome Project, which released a whole bunch of data about what are the A, T's, G's, and C's of our DNA, and then what do we do with that information? And not just DNA, but proteomics and all these other layers of biological data. So we uncovered all of this oil we had no idea what to do with. And so this was all kind of going on in parallel to what we were doing at EpiBone. And what I love about now, and I'm a lifelong learner, my co-founder and I are actually, as we speak, taking an AI and biopharma class at MIT online right now. Great class, shameless plug. And it's something that we knew about anyway, but I think I just bring that up because I think we can always, all of us, be lifelong learners and invest in our own exposure to these knowledge modalities or else risk being left behind, but also it's just really fun to be a student. So what I love about this class and what I love about what's true about AI, reflecting back what you said about it being horizontal, is that at no matter what stage of the process we're talking about, whether we're like me and Khatija developing therapeutics that will eventually help people, in the design of those, in the discovery of molecules, and what I care a lot about as well, in those downstream activities with clinical trials. How do we interpret the data, get early signals on how those molecules are performing or those therapeutics are performing, or decentralize human trials so we can get data from patients in the wild, or make smart factories that grow bone or cartilage cost effectively at unit cost economics that payers can pay for, and to do the studies that will prove to those payers that what we're doing is cost effective. I loved what you said about making that case to the stakeholders. So for us, it really is, the possibilities, I don't want to say are endless. I think where you devote your energy, because there's always a huge upfront cost, 5 years in your case, right? There's an upfront cost in time and effort towards picking where you're going to go and really get the most juice for the squeeze, if you're going to think about lemons, and making lemonade. And I think where I find the most fruitful avenues are around smart factories and decentralized trials for us personally. I think that's what also makes UAE really interesting, by the way, because they don't, all the AI initiatives around here will allow us to collect noisy data sets from patients in the wild, from their wearables, and be able to synthesize, discern the signal from the noise. So yeah, the possibilities, I don't want to say are endless. I think there really should be focused on taking labor-intensive activities like reading millions of papers, and making that more efficient, or in the case of predictive analytics, being able to see things that humans can't see. So I think those are kind of two lenses that I like to apply in terms of how to prioritize really where to apply AI, and curious to hear what others think about it as well.
LP, a lot of biotwin is focused on creating a digital twin for predicting. I think the word predictive is very much associated with AI, and you look at preventative medicine. Can you explain how AI has impacted biotwin and the different technologies that you're developing?
Yes, thank you. So we create a virtual replica of your own biology, which is quite complex. It wouldn't be possible without AI. 5 years ago, it wouldn't have been possible to launch BioTwin. We needed a computing power in the algorithm that exists today. One of the type of biomarker that we're tracking, there's a small molecule called metabolites. There's an estimated 4 million metabolites in the human body. Right now, a clinician might be using maybe 50 to 100. So there's a major gap between what could be done and what's being done. And that's one of the things BioTwin is doing. But one of the challenge with those biomarkers is they are extremely variable. They change all the time. There's they directly reflect what's going on with you and your body right now, which you'll guess changes all the time with the environment, with what you eat, your physical activity. So we need AI to make sense of that very, very high variability that also differ from one person to another, which allow us to personalize down the road treatment, medication, and other things. So we need to understand that. So that's really the start. And in terms of number, it's terabytes and terabytes of data. So lucky for us, we're working with major partners like Microsoft and Google. So they're helping us making sense of everything, because as my co-panelist said, having a lot of data is one thing, but making sense of it, that's the challenge. You also have to make sure that you have clean data. So it's all possible with AI to be able to make sense of it, to deliver something, a concrete outcome that can be used.
Thank you. And Khatija, with the kind of field of bioresolvable implants and the work that you've been doing, can you walk us through how AI has impacted your vision for Biosapien?
Yeah, definitely. I think unlike my panelists here, we don't utilize AI in the same capacity. So if it's all right, I'll just take 15 seconds to explain exactly what we do at Biosapien. So essentially, we are a biotech company that's focused on drug delivery. So if you know anyone that's been diagnosed with cancer, generally they get IV chemotherapy, they're tied to a machine, they get insane amount of systemic adverse effects. You know, they lose their hair, they end up with complications and other diseases on top of the cancer diagnostic itself. So essentially what we do is we've managed to create a 3D printed biodegradable drug delivery platform. Rolls right off the tongue. Essentially, in a nutshell, it's a Band-Aid for your cancer. So the idea is that you have this mesh that has the exact same type of chemotherapy that you would get systemically, but you're able to apply it locally onto the tissue during either minimally invasive surgical procedure or through an outpatient process. And you're able to get the same chemotherapy while you're sitting in this room, driving, eating, sleeping, whatever the case might be. So that's kind of what we work on at the moment, and we're in the process of starting our clinical trials here in Abu Dhabi, and hopefully, inshallah, by the end of Q1 of 2025, we would have launched the clinical trial here. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. In terms of the utilization of AI, similar to kind of what the panelists here also mentioned, we utilize AI to help reduce labor costs, right? So 5 years ago, it's me sitting in a basement somewhere with 6 laptops and 500 books and 50 papers, trying to analyze what the market is doing and where the trends are for the landscape and what's the newest, hottest thing. Well, now I just type that into ChatGPT at 7:30 in the morning, and it spits it out for me. So I think that's the way we really utilize it, is it's more of like day-to-day. And then another element that we utilize AI is actually on the clinical trial side. So doing patient selection, analyzing the data, and that's actually through a third-party partnership. Can't say who just yet, but you guys probably know they're in the region. So that's another added element. And then on the manufacturing side, we 3D print our chips. So it takes about 5 minutes for us to make these chips. We can do it remotely anywhere in the world. As long as I have a space twice my size, essentially, that's kind of what we need in order to create these therapeutic chips. So we utilize AI to basically assist with the manufacturing elements, to make sure that there are no human errors when it comes down to the mixturing of the materials, when it comes down to actually handling the chips themselves, to sterilizing and packaging, and ultimately the vision down the line, if I may, kind of paint that picture for you, is that you're sitting in a physician's office and you hear the world's terrible news that, oh my God, you've been diagnosed with cancer. But don't worry, Biosapien is there to save the day, because essentially you'll end up going into an OR and already we'll have a scan there that says, okay, you have a tumor that's 2 centimeters or 3 centimeters and it's shaped like Italy. I love Italy, so shaped like Italy, right? And what we can do on our end is you press a couple of buttons on our 3D printer, and the 3D printer will be able to make a personalized chip to your tumor, tailored for that, and have the exact dosage amount, so that way we know exactly what the tumor volume is and how much chemotherapy you need to be able to eradicate that tumor. So that's the big vision and how we plan on utilizing AI. Realistically, in the US, it's very difficult to get that approval. The US is still debating on the definition of what AI is, just so you guys understand how young it is in that regard. But the UAE has already been 10 steps ahead, I would say. I mean, they have they have an AI university, they have an AI department, they have a minister of AI. They have all these things to help push that momentum forward and become a thought leadership in that space. So what we're planning on doing in 5 years, we think we're able to complete that maybe in 4 with the help of the UAE and the DOH.
Thank you, Khadija. I mean, this panel is extremely impressive. I feel like you're all, on this mission to save humanity from different angles and using technology, like both from a deep tech and, AI, optimizing and utilizing everything that's out there. Just to wrap up our panel, I would love to hear from each one of you to, give advice to anyone that's in the audience who's an entrepreneur that's looking at radical, disruptive, technology and innovations in the health and wellness space. In a couple of words, what would you give them? Start with Nina.
That's a really insightful question. I think the advice I would give, especially because we were talking about so much deep tech and certainly technically difficult challenges we're all facing, is the beauty of technology is just one part of the story. We need to make sure our technologies work in our bodies, in the clinic, and in society. And if we're going to make sure that our technologies are going to work in those second and third categories, we need to make sure that we're innovative, not just in terms of the technology we're building, but in terms of our business model. Okay, and in the case of UAE, we have to wait in the US till we do phase 1, 2, 3, then we can sell product. Okay, here, the idea of being able to sell and risk share as we develop a product, that's an example when I say business model innovation. And I think we also need to do work to make sure that we address any potential cultural challenges that we might be facing as well. If we want our technologies to truly impact humanity, we need to also maybe put on our humanities hats and collaborate with poets and artists and realize that science fiction often leads the way to science fact. So to remember that we are humans and to not understate the value of the business or the humanities.
I would say that, as we've heard, the UAE is definitely leading the pack when it comes to AI and commitment to AI. And that's amazing. It's definitely one of the reasons why I moved from London to Abu Dhabi. However, the power of AI is really in making data speak. And I think we should really, in the investment community, in the business community, to start to look at AI businesses from the perspective of exactly what their superpower is. Having the ability to measure what that output is, what the impact is. If that is not present, then most of the time you don't have AI. So if you do have AI, it means you can measure outcomes, impact, have a return on investment measure, have an outcome measure that's tangible. In the absence of that, you probably don't have AI.
On my side, the advice I would give entrepreneur is to really think ahead. I'm sure there's a lot of people that thinks, how can we use, let's say, ChatGPT or LLM model to innovate? Well, it's a bit too late. You need to think what's going to be coming next and to think outside of the box or from a different perspective. I like Nina's point of asking an artist or a poet to really get a different point of view. At BioTwin, we thought of the idea of taking existing digital twin technology from manufacturing sector and say, what if we apply that to human? What would it be? So that's what we're doing now. But the challenge is what's going to be the innovation 5 years from now or even 10 years from now? It's quite hard, but that'd be the challenge or the advice I would tell a future entrepreneur.
Khadija, with the closing remarks as well, with some exciting news.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the advice I would give founders is it takes twice as long, it takes twice as much money, and if you think nothing's going to go wrong, you're absolutely wrong. Everything will go wrong that you think will go wrong, and that's the reality of being a founder. So I think the utmost characteristics that you need to have is resilience And you need to be able to want the thing that you are building to succeed. And I think that's the most important message that I could voice to anybody here, is that whatever you're building, make sure you care about it enough to be awake at 3 in the morning and still be willing to love what you're doing. And I think that's the message here. If I may, just for 5 seconds, I would just also like to take this moment to announce that we've actually successfully closed our pre-A financing round from the region itself with Global Ventures, which is the best venture capital, I would say, in the region, hands down, Golden Gates, and a very well-known family office in Saudi. So we plan on utilizing that capital to start clinical trials and manufacturing. And I just wanted to shout out Hub 71 for all the help and support that they gave us to getting it there. Thank you.
To close this amazing heartfelt panel with these amazing entrepreneurs and innovators, thank you so much, Nina, Lorena, LP, and Khatija, and thank you all for joining us here. Don't go anywhere. We have another panel very shortly, also talking about impact and profitability. So stay tuned. Thank you, guys. Round of applause again for the audience.